What's going on, everyone? This is a very special and loaded edition of Strictly Business with Eric Bischoff. I am Jon Alba. This podcast, of course, is brought to you by the ad-free shows and podcast heat networks. Hope everyone is doing well and had a great week. We have a very busy episode of the podcast ahead. So without further ado, let's bring in the man who's going to break it all down for us, Mr. Eric Bischoff, coming to us from Wyoming today. Buddy, whew, what an episode we have ahead. How are you?
I'm good. Doing great, man. Just loving life. I whacked out my 5-day fast last week, and I'm now 4 days into a carnivore diet, strictly carnivore. And I've got to tell you, I feel better than I have felt in 30 years or more.
You know, I got to ask, what meats are you eating?
Primarily beef, wild game, venison, elk. Chicken. I'm just not a big pork eater, Yeah. I'll have like sausage in the morning every once in a while, things like that, but I really don't do much pork. Pork tenderloins I like a lot, so I'll do some of those. But primarily beef, chicken, a lot of fish. I eat a ton of fish. Wild caught salmon. None of that farm raised garbage, poison, trash. Don't eat it.
Have you gone on the sous vide flow? Have you ever sous vide?
I haven't, and I keep every year right around the holidays. I go, I'm going to try that.
Dude, game changer.
I'm going to get one. They're not expensive. They're easy to use, and it is, especially for like your Wagyu cuts and things like that, where you want an absolutely controlled temperature, and then you just finish them off on a grill or even on a flat griddle is fine. But yeah, I'm going to have to try that. Thanks for reminding me,
buddy. I sous vide everything, and it is like. You haven't had a steak until you've tried a sous vide steak. It's just next level. It's so good. Cannot recommend it enough. Definitely a good one. Get it for Mrs. B for the holidays.
Before we get going, you're talking about beef and sous vide. I want to talk about Riverbend Ranch. Riverbend Ranch is where I get my meat. We get Riverbend Ranch Black Label. It is unbelievable. There's a lot of things I love about it. One of them is no hormones ever, no antibiotics ever. Riverbend Ranch has their own processing plant. They'll also have their own aging facilities. Now, this is really important because the only place you're going to get a really high quality aged steak is if you go into a super high-end restaurant in New York, Chicago, LA. I couldn't even find one where I live, to be honest with you, in a store, or a restaurant. But you're getting absolutely the best cut of meat, aged for 21 days. It's grass-fed. They have their own processing plant. So they're not shipping it off to some, one of the big four processors that process 90% of the meats in America. They have their own processing facilities. So where it's grown, how it's been bred. This is like a 27-year breeding program for these cattle. Wow. And they're raised up in a high mountain meadow area. So the grass is great up there. The feed is great, it's plentiful. They graze, and the quality of the product is second none. You can have it delivered to your door. If you compare prices to some of the other box meat, home delivery meats services, and there's some good ones out there, but if you compare prices of Riverbend to some of the other more, we'll call them national brands, you're going to be shocked. Go to riverbendranch.com and you'll find out how you can enjoy the best meat.
I want to make it clear.
Meat or otherwise, brother.
They are not an advertiser for us. It's just Eric putting them over. I want to make that.
No, I love the product. I'm evangelical about the product.
No, that's great. That's awesome, man. I'm all about it. Get Mrs. B on the sous vide flow. Get it as a gift for her for the holidays, and then utilize that to your advantage. Hey, I was at SNY last night, and everyone was like, you got to get Eric Bischoff's thoughts on Shohei Ohtani's contract. I sent this to you when it happened. This is like the biggest thing in the sports world right now. Shohei Ohtani signs with the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's technically a $436 million deal over 10 years, but because of this game-changing contract deferral, and I'm curious if this bleeds over into wrestling or anything else, he's only going to get paid $2 million a year. And then because of taxes and deferrals, he's going to make $68 million a year for the next 10 years after the contract expires. It's absolutely crazy. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, Conrad Thompson negotiated that deal.
Yeah.
You did know that, right? I mean, there's a connection here. Conrad
Yeah.
Thompson is brilliant. When it comes to money, you want Conrad Thompson on your side. Just ask Shohei Ohtani. He'll tell you all about it. No, listen, I think it's great. I mean, I haven't taken a giant deep dive into it because there's so many other variables that wouldn't exist, as you said, in professional wrestling, salary caps and rules and all kinds of other union issues and things I don't even know about, but I'm sure exist somewhere in the crannies of this business. But clearly, never been a deal structured like that before.
No.
It's awesome. And like you, it'll be interesting to see what effect does this have on other professional sports, football, baseball, other places where there's salary caps and the types of variables that I'm alluding to.
Yeah, just all that deferred money is just crazy. And
how cool is this? I've never, again, I'm not a baseball guy, and I know who he is, Shohei Ohtani, and I know about him a little bit peripherally. But now I want to meet him. I want to learn from this cat. This guy is like the Sun Tzu of baseball, man. He's the ultimate warrior, and he's taking, no pun intended, because we're kind of a thematically based wrestling show, but the discipline. For a young man to look at that much money and say to himself, or hopefully in the future herself, I know I'm making $500 million a year, but I only need $2 million. Well, and I'll spread the rest out over a lifetime. This cat and the people that he's surrounded by are people that I would just like to be in the same room with for 20 minutes. Because if even a little bit of that shit wore off, that's game changing, man. That's a really, really impressive young man.
Well, it helps when you make $50 to $75 million a year in endorsements alone. So that gives you a little flexibility.
Yeah, but still, that's such forward thinking. And
sure,
I wish I would have had even a fraction of that forward thinking when I was making what in my career has been the bigger money, the most money, because I've burned through a lot, and it's not like I went out and bought. Well, I did buy an airplane, so I guess that counts. But but it's not like I didn't have a garage full of expensive cars. I mean, I lived at my means in many, many respects.
Yeah.
But I took a lot of chances, and I thought, oh, this money's going to keep coming in. Oh, I'm good at making money, which is true. But things change, and for a young man, again, here's what I give him credit for: surrounding himself with people like that and trusting them. That's awesome.
Going to be crazy to see it. Just so many people were like, you got to ask Eric about this. It's such a business thing. So curious.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go off into the weeds, but you know how I am.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I read it in the YouTube comments every single week. But
plus I'm gearing up for this show because this mucker father is going to be hot.
Well, and you got a big prediction you told me that you want to make that you'll make at some point here during the show about 2024. But we are live on ad-free shows as we record this. We got Bobby in here. We got Kelly. We got Matt. We got Pyrus. We got Aaron. We got Rosie. He says this show is going to be a banger. Excited to hear what you guys will teach us. I'll tell you, Rosie, we're going to teach, but we're also going to just try to take this in because there's a myriad of information that has come in the last 24 hours as we tape this about the future of both WWE and AEW. And that begins, I guess, if you truly want to go back to the origin of the chatter, it started with a Dave Meltzer tweet, ironically, a few days ago, where he essentially insinuated things are about to change within the industry. I'll get on your side here for a second, Eric. I hate vague tweeting, and I don't think any journalist should be vague tweeting. I think if you have news and you're ready to break it, you got to put it out there. And I thought the vague tweeting created a ton of hysteria that was just totally unnecessary.
Yeah, but you said journalist. Dave Meltzer, I think we can all agree
I knew that was coming.
Does not fall under the auspices of what you could expect as a journalist.
Yeah,
anybody else. Maybe, the guy can't put a paragraph together that's grammatically coherent. Why would you expect him to adhere to some vague journalistic rule book?
I was just disappointed. But anyway, we got the big report on Thursday morning. This comes from our pal Mike Johnson at PW Insider. Top WWE execs meet with WBD about potential Raw deal, full details. He said, World Wrestling Entertainment continues to work on locking in a new media rights partner for Monday Night Raw. PWInsider.com can confirm that this past Monday night, TKO's Mark Shapiro, as well as WWE's Nick Khan and Paul Levesque, were in New York City at the Warner Bros. Discovery headquarters, meeting with WBD executive Bruce Campbell about potentially moving Raw to the WBD family. Campbell holds the position of Chief Revenue and Strategy Officer. We are told that the WWE contingent met with Campbell for several hours Monday morning, with at least part of the meeting taking place in a conference room usually reserved for David Zaslav. Levesque was at Raw later that night in Cleveland. Now, Eric, there are a lot of variables at play here, needless to say. Tony Khan then said on the Ring of Honor media call the next day that he met with Warner Brother Discovery executives on Tuesday morning. So WWE met with them Monday, according to this report, and then AEW met with them on Tuesday. WWE jumping into the game with Warner Brothers Discovery would have a radical effect on the pro wrestling industry, Eric. Before we get deep into the weeds, your initial impressions.
I'm not surprised. Anybody that's been listening to this show since we started it, or some of the discussions that Conrad Thompson and I have had over the last couple of years, will tell you how I reacted to it. I saw the end of this movie coming. I've been watching the end of this movie, and let's be clear, the movie's not over yet. Things can change. We'll see. And despite the way this show is going to sound, or at least my portion of it, I'm not happy this is happening. I'm frustrated because it shouldn't have happened. We shouldn't even if nothing else happens beyond this, we shouldn't have gotten to this point of discussion. Right now, AEW and WBD should be in a long-term relationship. This deal should have been renegotiated. They should have been moving forward with a plan months ago. Those conversations should have started almost a year ago. All right. But instead, here we are. And presumably, if the reporting is accurate, and I absolutely have 110% confidence in Mike Johnson from PW Insider, so it's not to suggest I don't, but I don't think anybody knows except for the principals what's likely to happen. But we all have a pretty good idea of where those dots are, and it's not that hard to connect the dots. And unfortunately, I've been connecting those dots and identifying the dots and the patterns for the last 2 years, which is why we're here. And this is not a I told you so. This is trying to explain why this shit frustrates me. It's the same thing whenever I talk about TNA, that I get frustrated because of loss of opportunities. You've heard me say this a million times before. If you listen to this show or anything else that I'm involved with, opportunities are a gift. They're very, very, very hard to come by. And to see an opportunity like I experienced in TNA, and now watching it kind of write its story over the last 2 years, is very frustrating to me. So this is not I told you so. This is just my best of reacting to the questions you're going to ask me.
Yeah. And there's going to be a lot of hypothetical what ifs during the course of this conversation, because so much of it is yet to play out here. Obviously, we're still in the very initial stages of this news becoming public.
Say that one more time, because I want to make it clear. Nobody's dancing on anybody's grave. We're not even pronouncing the patient, in critical condition yet. We're just looking at the dots and starting to create a picture.
Yeah, and there are a lot of dots to connect here, because there's so many different variables at play throughout the course of this conversation, and you look deeper into this. But I do want to say, piggybacking off of what you just started with and laid the foundation for, I cannot believe, Eric, that we have gotten to this point where we are even having a discussion about this, given the nature that we know AEW has with Warner Brothers Discovery.
What is that? No, but okay, define that though, John, for our listeners.
Define the relationship?
Yeah. What do we really know about the relationship?
Well, we believe, and we've talked about this on the record here, we believe that they have an equity stake in the company to some degree. We know that they were one of the first entities to truly give AEW and Tony Khan a shot and give them a platform. Now, the one caveat is that was the old ownership and the old guard at Warner Brothers Discovery that gave them that opportunity and have that platform. Allegedly, citing many conversations that Tony Khan has gone on the record about, he has said that he and David Zaslav has a great relationship. Now,
Yeah, but
that's nothing more than let's say
okay.
that's nothing more than PR. That's
That's
nothing more than PR.
PR Hollywood
Right.
speak.
Of course. I totally agree and recognize
that's what I think of that. Twee.
But we know that they have been critical to AEW's launch within these first 5 years. Can we agree on that?
Sure.
Okay. So that's what I talk about when I say the relationship that has existed.
All
We've
right.
also
So
been hearing.
let me dissect that, John. I know you got a lot of grounds you want to cover, and you're on fire. But nothing that you said means anything. The fact that they were the first network to give Tony Khan a shot, put a price tag on that. It means fucking nothing. What's more important that you pointed out accurately, and I think in a smart way, was that was different management that brought AEW in. Zaslav took over an existing agreement. So Zaslav didn't give Tony Khan any opportunity. He inherited it. So there's no value in the point that you made to me. There's no value in the point that you made to me relating to this special relationship. It was a pre-existing relationship.
I don't think
the kid came with it.
I don't think it's a special relationship. I'm just saying they have a relationship.
They have a business relationship. That's the beginning and that's the end. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. So I think we should dismiss, because there's so much narrative, especially from idiots like Dave Meltzer, who are nothing more than surrogates and have been surrogates for AEW. There's a direct line of communication on a regular basis between Tony Khan and Dave Meltzer based on information that I absolutely trust. Okay. The whole, the highest rated show, they're going to do so well and they're going to triple. How many times over the last 2 years, year and a half, have we been reading how the peripheral media and guys like Dave Meltzer were talking about doubling and tripling their licensing revenue in their new deal based on comparing ratings for wrestling to ratings for hockey, which will take us into an ad sales conversation somewhere during the middle of the show, I'm sure. But there's been so much bullshit surrounding AEW because it's all been targeted towards the internet from the top all the way down. It's an internet wrestling community driven business model.
So with that said, we are potentially looking at a scenario where the game would change drastically across the board. Now, just because this news of Warner Brothers Discovery and WWE having a meeting came out doesn't necessarily mean that WBD is WWE's preferred partner of choice, or that WBD is ready to sit there and make a deal with WWE. We don't know that. We do know that there are multiple suitors involved.
Whoa. Okay. Okay.
We know that. We know that.
Well, tell me what you know, because we don't know that.
Well, it was quite literally reported just a couple of weeks ago that WWE was in Los Angeles meeting with multiple suitors, and they didn't say who, but they met with multiple suitors and were.
Why is that news?
What's that?
Why would that be news? Why is that important?
No, well, because that's what I just said to you. I just said we know that there have been conversations with multiple suitors. That's the point that I'm making.
Because it was right, but first of all, it was reported by who? Number one, because that matters in this conversation.
I think it was PW Insider that reported that.
Okay, then I would believe it to be true.
Yeah.
All right.
This was the Raw that Paul Levesque was not at, that Bruce Pritchard ran a couple weeks ago. And then allegedly there's more meetings scheduled too for the next couple weeks when they're back in Los Angeles. So plus we know this, Eric. I mean, we just saw this with the sale and the merger. There were multiple suitors involved with that. There's no reason to believe that Warner Brothers.
One of which, by the way, here's another important dot. This is another one of my points over the last year or so. I absolutely believe that Warner Brothers Discovery was one of the initial corporate interests in acquiring, along with Endeavor, acquiring WWE. So that's a big dot. That puts a level of interest, because anybody thinking about acquiring at that time, obviously WWE, knew what they were getting into in terms of the scope of that deal, cost of that deal. The fact that WBD, in my opinion, was one of the initial media companies involved in the process of a potential acquisition, leads me to believe that WBD's interest in this possibility predates any of Dave Meltzer's cryptic tweets or any of the other stuff that we're talking about now. But what we're talking about now, I think, started a long time ago.
So let me ask this then, and this is kind of piggybacking off of the point that you made earlier about selling these shows, right? Because we've had this conversation on this podcast. We had it with Raj, and you and I have talked about it casually too. Selling wrestling is really hard for advertising. It's really hard. Fox, the Murdoch family themselves, said that the reason they weren't retaining Fox was just because it wasn't lining up in that sense. So what would be the incentive then to try and get into bed with another wrestling company if you're potentially having a hard time selling another one versus just getting out of that industry altogether? That's me genuinely asking that question.
I think recognizing that they're two different audiences and they're two different products. They're not the same product from a television point of view, from an audience point of view, from a commercially viable entertainment point of view. While AEW, a large core, I don't know if it's the largest or not. I've obviously never done any research on their audience, but there's certain things you can see and patterns you can observe. They're two separate products. WWE is infinitely more commercially viable. It's easier to sell ads in WWE programming and has been now for a long time at a very, very high level that is a standard in the industry, as opposed to, I don't know, the blood, the language, the Vince Russo-esque attempts to try to stimulate your 18 to 49 internet wrestling audience. Sure, that works for that small segment of the audience, but you can't sell ads in it. Have we heard this conversation before on Strictly Business or 83 weeks over the last, 2 years? Yeah, I think so. So much so that I get people pissed off at me bringing it up all the time.
But if Fox is sitting there outright saying, we had a hard time selling this, why would another entity then be like, bring it to us? Is it because it's not apples to apples? We're talking broadcast versus
I think a lot of it, from an ad sales point of view, it's not even apples and oranges. It's like apples and donkeys. They're not even in the same species. But look, Fox Network may not have been able to justify the ad sales on a Friday night based on the price that they were paying for it. We don't know. First of all, we don't know that there'll ever be a price. This could all be a really fun conversation leading up to a big, popcorn fart. Who knows? We'll find out in the future. But I could see a scenario where TBS is looking and going, okay, look, we may not be able to get competitive network TV rates for those ads, but we can get more than competitive ad sales rates for those ads. And based on the price and the differential between what they can realize in revenues based on ad sales versus the cost and the expense of the licensing, perhaps there's a valuation in there for the growth of audience and the demo that comes with WWE, because that network needs more eyeballs. And if WWE, as they have proven over the decades, as professional wrestling has overall in general, has proven that you will get eyeballs if you have wrestling. And if your network needs eyeballs, use wrestling. I don't know, going all the way back to Ted freaking Turner when he launched the Superstation. Read the damn book. It's called It Ain't As Easy As It Looks. Look it up. It's true as time itself when it comes to the television business. There is a scenario where I could see why it would benefit, ironically enough, Ted Turner, who's in need, not Ted Turner, Turner Broadcasting, who's in need in order to build an audience that's rapidly deteriorating, they need a fresh set of eyeballs. And WWE brings it with. That could justify the difference in price and the difference in decision-making between Fox and Turner, because they're not in the same situation.
The biggest underlier, truthfully, is the status of Warner Brothers Discovery going forward and what their strategic plan is. Because we've received a lot of mixed signals about their path forward here and what they're going to choose to do. I mean, turn the clocks back a year ago, and David Zaslav verbatim said that the NBA rights were not all that important to them. And if they lost them, they lost them. And then we saw a tonal shift in that in the last few months where now they're fully engaged in the NBA rights once again. The NBA rights, I think the general consensus among a lot of the sports media industry are going to be the true driver of discussion points and change within the next several months. WWE, I don't know, Eric, what would you say? Would you estimate that Monday Night Raw will probably get around the same monetary value that SmackDown got, around 1.4 billion, would you say?
I don't know. I don't know the market anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can agree. We know what it was the last TV rights deal, it was around $1 billion. So I think somewhere in that billion to 1.4 billion range is probably where Monday Night Raw would fall in terms of what it would command. If the WBD doesn't know the future of its strategic planning for what type of rights it's going to retain, getting into bed and making a deal of that magnitude with WWE, it seems, I don't know, it would seem unconventional to me. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know how many network 5-year programming strategy plans you've been involved with. But I know I never have.
Yeah.
But having worked with networks, not in the wrestling business. I mean, I learned a lot about working with networks in the wrestling business, but I learned a lot more when I had my own production company with Jason Hervey for a period of, I don't know, 10 years. Very more than that. Very, very successful as independent television producers. But one of the reasons we were successful as independent television producers is because we were close to people like David Zaslav. And when I say close, I don't mean socially close, but I mean in meetings with and listening to programming decisions and strategies and plans and going to television networks with our agents, where we would sit down with very high level executives towards the end of the year and have a conversation. It sounded something like, okay, Eric and agent, here's where we see our programming going for the next year, possibly 2. Whoa, that's surprising because it was a change in direction. And there's multiple levels of planning going on. So because I've never been in a 5-year strategic programming planning meeting at a high level at a network, and neither is any of our listeners, I would hope someone is so they can chime in on this, but there is probably plan A with NBA, plan B without NBA, plan C without NBA or WWE. I'm guessing that there are layers of strategic planning going on that contemplates one or the other or both, and a plan in place to execute based on whatever happens. I don't think David Zaslav or anybody at the executive level below him, slightly below him, or whatever, is sitting around going, well, so we know about this NBA deal, we better just sit around and wait.
Right.
No. These motherfuckers are paid based on their ability to look in their individual crystal balls and see the future before anybody else does and plan accordingly.
Well, then there's also the part of the WBD equation where the chatter for so long has been that Zaslav was brought in to cut costs rather, which we've seen indisputably. They have cut a ton of costs across all different sectors of the brand. There has been speculation from industry insiders that WBD is being set up to be sold, and that's why they were cutting those costs, maybe to an Apple or someone along those lines. Could something like that get in the way of rights acquisitions for any property?
I think there's so much supposition based on chatter like that, because all it is people guessing. David Zaslav's coming in, he's cutting costs. Guess anytime there's a massive merger or acquisition, there is cost cutting. There is fat. There is a true analysis of what's working and what's not working that's based on numbers and not emotion. That's the cold, hard realities of acquisitions and mergers, and why people often dread them, because somebody's going to die. That's just how it works. Somebody's position is going to get killed. Somebody's going to get replaced. There's duplication. There's a change in direction and strategy that doesn't necessitate certain departments and infrastructure. That's just like, when in your body cells die and they're replaced with new cells, and that's how you keep living. The same thing happens in business when there's mergers and acquisitions. So I think when David Zaslav came in, sure, it's easy. Any first year business administration student at a junior college could write a thesis about what might be happening because David Zaslav is coming in and is cutting costs based on the plethora of stories that are all involved with coming in, buying a company, cutting the costs and selling it off in pieces. That's a hostile takeover, I guess. What we could also be seeing is David Zaslav coming in, and this is just conjecture on my part, obviously, but a guy like Zaslav coming in, cutting out all the non-profitable centers or the inefficient infrastructure, and cutting your costs down to what is almost a bare minimum, and then building your revenues. Because you can't do both at the same time. You can't be inefficient, ineffective, redundant, non-profitable over here and invest in NBAs and WWEs or new movies or whatever else, right? You have to stop the bleeding, become as efficient as possible. Japanese have a term for it. It's called kaizen. Go kaizen, right? Get efficient, get effective, and then grow your business. So that could be happening. We don't know.
That is one of the biggest underlying things here, right? We don't know. Very few people do know what the nitty-gritty part of this is. I
do, but whatever.
You claim is there anything that you want to, you said you had a big prediction.
Well, actually, that was yesterday.
Okay.
Because while you were convinced that I'm not making fun of you, John, but one of the reasons I don't pay attention to half or three-quarters of the stuff that people in the wrestling space do is because it's all bullshit. It's just all bullshit. So I believed 100% that all of the stuff that we're talking about today, I was pretty well aware of before that, but I was ready to go yesterday. I wanted to do it before anybody else. So I was setting it up, and then I got blindsided by a conference call that I absolutely had to be on. So that postponed it. So yesterday, you and I were going to go to town.
Yeah.
And I was going to put you through, in a fun way, a meat grinder that when you woke up this morning and saw the news that you saw this morning, you were going to go, damn it. It would have been a good show. But yeah. None of this is surprising.
Well, it's funny, man, because I've been talking to people on all sides of the industry here in AEW, WWE, Warner Bros. Discovery even. And really, just from the actual news perspective, the meeting and everything of that, WWE PR outright denied there being a meeting. And that would be fascinating to me because you would think that you would want that out there for leverage purposes of public,
No,
even
no, no,
court
no,
of
no,
public
you
opinion.
wouldn't. No, you wouldn't, man. You
Oh,
don't
I
want your
totally disagree
business
with that.
being played out there in a fucking dirt
No,
sheets.
not playing out your negotiations, but being able to say, yeah, we've got a lot of suitors out here for us.
That's a given. That's a good look. To go out there and dance around and have your picture taken out in fucking Hollywood, talking to a business executive, or have your PR department, confirm it or whatever. That's like junior high school level optics when it comes to business.
I'm just telling you, I know historically how these PR people work for these companies, and that's absolutely something that historically they would want out there. And
No, but no. At a low level, yeah. But if you're actually doing a deal, I can tell you this from firsthand experience multiple times. And I've been in this situation multiple times, not even in the wrestling side of things. When you're getting real close to doing a significant deal, nobody talks if it's real. Now, if it's posturing and posing and trying to convince people that you got shit going on and make them jealous and make them want to jump in faster, make them worried that maybe they're not going to get an opportunity to bid on you, that kind of low-level PR shit happens all the time. Don't deny it. Hell, I've done that too. But when it's serious, no. Well, and there's a good chance the internal Endeavor PR, TKO PR, they might not even have known about it.
And I think that's what it was, truthfully. Do you think that there's any possibility that the word leaking of this could have had anything to do with trying to get the people at AEW to wake up? Like that it was leaked from someone within Warner Brothers Discovery trying to send a message? Do you think there's any possibility of that? I'm going with what chatter is. So I'm asking you what you would say to that.
I just said it. Childish. Okay. Childish. That chatter started somewhere. And if you could track that chatterbot all the way to the knucklehead that threw it out there, digitally or otherwise, you would find somebody that doesn't have a freaking clue how real life works at that level.
It's my job to ask the questions.
That's all right. I'm not shooting the messenger, brother. I'm making fun of that chatbot.
Well, then here is the true question that is begged to be asked. Why now? What happened that we are now in a world where we're openly talking about WWE and Warner Bros. Discovery allegedly being in some intense negotiations here over a potential Monday Night Raw TV deal? The common denominator that everyone's going to point to, Eric, is CM Punk showing up. And on Monday, they have this meeting. Well, what happens Monday night? CM Punk in storyline signs with Monday Night Raw. I'm going to be on that brand. We know CM Punk has spoken outwardly about his relationship with David Zaslav, which again could just be PR conjecture. But still, if you're trying to draw point A to point B, that's out there in the public arena. So do you see any correlation with that?
Say that again without all the drama.
Do you think that CM Punk is in any way responsible for these public conversations between WBD and WWE and them getting potentially closer to the finish line on a deal?
That's complicated. And by the way, I'm going to go on record right now. You're saying that CM Punk and the acquisition of CM Punk by WWE might be one of the most financially successful acquisitions in the history of professional wrestling. Wow, did I just say that?
How did we go from CM Punk won't draw a dime to this? And I'm asking that so genuinely, not even facetiously trying to be an asshole. I'm asking that genuinely.
And I'll tell you honestly.
Okay.
The difference and the answer to that question lies in the CM Punk that I saw when he first showed up in AEW and the CM Punk I saw when he showed up in WWE. Two different people, two different shows, two different businesses, two different approaches to the product. One would not draw a dime or increase television revenues, which was true. Was absolutely true and accurate. And one, as of right now, two different situations completely. And now the other one is perhaps, to answer your question, partially, fortuitously. Ooh, did I just say fortuitously? Awesome. Fortuitously, in terms of the timing, going back to the point that I made earlier, in all seriousness, WBD expressed a strong interest in WWE and its programming, going all the way back to the announcement early this year that WWE was up for sale, or whatever that was. My opinion, let me clarify, my strong opinion is that WWE was actively engaged in an attempt to acquire WWE, along with Endeavor and others, formerly in the process.
That WBD was in the process, you're saying?
Correct. So that was the first dot. That's a big dot. Where WWE is at in negotiations, I think the timing of it all, I think this conversation would have happened anyway. I think the fact that CM Punk, well, it's not even an opinion. The fact that WWE turned around on a dime, brought him in, and now we're seeing the heightened level of shit going on, chatter, if you will, observation. I don't know. I think it's fortuitous, again, to just use that word, because it's just, I love it when it rolls off my tongue like that, fortuitous. I think it's a big benefit, but I don't think it was instrumental. I think it's a bonus. I think it may accelerate. I think it may ensure a deal where perhaps one may have been tentative previously. But it's not just, and here's another reason why. And this isn't something I saw. This is something that was pointed out to me that just rang a bell, right? CM Punk just didn't show up. If you go back and look at some of his promos, and I did after this individual kind of smartened me up, Punk's promos were almost weird.
In WWE?
In WWE. Uncharacteristic, and I'm home. I'm home. I'm home. I mean, there was a lot of effort made on that particular night to send a message to the world that CM Punk was home. That's another, when I heard that, and just kind of the tone and nature of some of his promos, I think it's a big benefit, but I don't think it was the impetus. I don't think it was a catalyst. I think it's a benefit.
Well, there's no doubting. You look at the numbers. His segments are showing increases in the quarters. His merch is moving hot. The social media impressions are off the frickin' charts with anything that they put up with him. So much so that they've just randomly been uploading just bizarre niche CM Punk matches to their YouTube channel just for clicks. They've been going all in on this. So the CM Punk brand, if you will, is drawing hot right now for WWE.
It's drawing hot in WWE. It did not draw hot in AEW. Big difference. Two different business models, two different companies, two different approaches to the industry. The CM Punk that we saw in AEW was a no-win, ain't going to happen, not going to move the needle, certainly not to the extent that everybody thought it would. And the ratings prove that. I know he sold a lot of t-shirts. That's because there's a lot of WWE fans out there. Did not move the needle in AEW, actually did damage in AEW because of the situation there, because of the way the company's run. And now you're seeing an entirely different outcome.
Well,
Almost like two different products.
I'll tell you this. Well, they are different products. And
they are.
And that's fine. That's not a bad thing. That's fine that they're two different products. That's
get hot, John. Don't get hot. Fuck.
No, I'm not. I'm not getting hot. I'm just saying that's why AEW exists in the first place, right? To be a different product at the end of the day. Well, and there's a whole conversation in that too, as far as this sharing the space, which we'll get into. But on the Punk front, one thing that just stood out to me like crazy, Eric, and I know you're going to be in agreement with me on this. What's the program for CM Punk right now? It's going to be Seth Rollins. It's going to be at WrestleMania. That's where they're headed, right? We know that there is real life heat between the two of these guys. And guess what's going to happen? They're going to put that real life heat behind them, and they're going to get together, and they're going to have a main event match at WrestleMania and make a crap ton of money for themselves and the company. And they're going to give fans something that fans want to see. The fact, regardless of who you want to say, who was at fault in all the drama that happened with the Elite and CM Punk, whoever you think is at fault, regardless of that, the fact that it was not put down on them that you guys are going to get together, you're going to hash this out, at least to the point where you're going to work together and we're going to make money off this. How bad is that exposed in juxtaposition to what we're seeing in WWE right now with what Seth Rollins and Punk are about to do?
Well, I mean, again, this goes back to some of the stuff that I take so much heat for. And there's still people out there thinking, oh, the only reason Eric's saying anything negative about AEW is because Tony Khan wouldn't give him a job. Fuck, I wouldn't work for Tony Khan. I mean, Tony Khan has enough money to make me do a lot of shit. But would I actually enjoy or embrace the opportunity to work there? Absolutely not. And it would take an ungodly amount of money for me to put myself through it. So much so that nobody in their right mind. Well, maybe I could get it. I don't know. I should call Conrad and see if he'd represent me like he did Shohei Ohtani. Maybe not.
Get those deferrals, man.
Get those deferrals, right? But look, it's leadership. It's leadership, or in this case, lack thereof. It's vision. It's maturity. It's all of the above. And it's experience, or lack thereof. It's so many things, but it comes down to one person. There's nobody else to blame.
Santa baby. Well, you didn't come to hear me sing. You came to hear us talk here on Strictly Business. I'm going to tell you that the season for a fresh cut is finally here with the sponsors of today's edition of Strictly Business, Manscaped. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming have just launched their 5th-generation performance package to help you avoid another silent night in the bedroom this year. Take care of your special snowflake with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra and watch your South Pole shine like never before. Get the best stocking stuffer of all by going to manscaped.com and using code WrestleBiz for 20% off plus free shipping. Mrs. Claus? Well, you know she's going to thank you. Manscaped is a one-stop shop for all your holiday needs. They've got the perfect gift in the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, which includes loads of perfect stocking stuffers. I don't know about you. I am a perpetual procrastinator with the holidays. So if you're looking for the perfect last-minute gift, Manscaped has got you covered. What could be better than giving the gift of good hygiene and a few laughs along the way? Starting with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, this is the crown jewel of the holidays, and dare I say, the best ball trimmer of perhaps all time. The electric razor's advanced skin-safe technology is a lifesaver and known for reducing nicks and cuts on his Santa sack. But the fun does not stop there. Anybody in the family have too much scruff? Well, look no further than the Manscaped Beard Hedger Pro Kit and Handyman Electric Face Shaver for all of his facial hair needs. Dad have those nasty nose hairs? Well, save the day with the Weed Whacker 2.0 nose and ear hair trimmer. Is there Boxer Game Week? Take care of the chestnuts with Manscaped's Boxers 2.0 featuring their signature jewel pouch to keep you calm, cool, and collected. And yeah, we can admit it. Sometimes our nails have seen better days. Manscaped has got you covered with the new Shears 3.0 nail grooming kit. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code WrestleBiz at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code WrestleBiz, WrestleBiz. Say ho, ho, ho to a well-groomed mistletoe with Manscaped. And it looks like Punk wants to set himself up to be a player for the future for them. He's been spending a ton of time at NXT. He's been down at the Performance Center. He's been doing some self-appointed coaching. I mean, it's a great start. Now, will it be sustained? We'll find out. There's still plenty of time. Anything could go wrong at any given moment on that front. But so far, so good.
I can see it now. I can see it. CM Punk goes from being an outcast, thrown out of the back of the building by Triple H. CM Punk goes while he's still working for another company, and he goes and he wants to just put it all to bed, and Triple H tosses him out of the building, or Vince McMahon did. He's an outcast. He's fired from AEW. He's down. He's angry. He's frustrated because deep down inside, he knows he has so much more to give. And he's realized through all of this controversy and the ups and the downs and the pressure and the anger and the frustration that deep down inside, there is a true passion for an industry that he was ready to walk away from. Willing to step into a UFC cage and get his brains kicked out in the process of trying to rediscover that passion, but to no avail. And now finally he's home. And he's going to light that fire, and that fire of passion is going to burn bright, not only for himself and the people that he loves, but for the rest of the roster, the young talent that are coming up, because now he realizes it's not about the fame. It's not even about the fortune. It's about the passion and the sharing of that light of passion. That's what it's all about. Until one day, because fuck it, I'm going to turn heel and take it all. There you go. 2 years. I just gave you 2 freaking years in an elevator pitch.
Your 180 on Phil Brooks is better character development than I've seen on any pro wrestling programming in the course of the last decade. It's true.
And that's just me sitting around talking to you, having fun.
It's true character development at a totally different level. This is better than the Bloodline, as far as I see it. Man, look, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I am hardly ever wrong, John.
Except for when you're getting your head shaved, of course. Yeah.
I got to work on that. I got some shame in my game. I got to work on the head shaving bullshit.
What do you think about the idea? And this is, I can only see something like this happening if WBD just got out of the NBA game altogether, but the idea of WBD becoming the home of pro wrestling and keeping both properties and offshooting AEW to another sector of Warner Brothers Discovery, say the Discovery Channel or another property that it owns. Do you see a world in which they can coexist?
Oh, well, theoretically, sure. Theoretically, but just kind of take a mental snapshot of that scenario, if you will, and okay, where would AEW go? So Raw's on TBS or TNT, whatever it's going to be, TBS, I guess, whatever. I don't know. A Turner platform, cable. Where does AEW go? I mean, within that Turner environment, where would they be subjugated to?
I'd be surprised if they kept them on one on TBS, one on TNT, but I suppose it's possible. But if they were to offshoot them to, say, a True TV or a Discovery or something in that realm, which is clearly a downgrade from being on TBS or TNT, would you be surprised if a Nick Khan entity would be okay with something like that? I don't know. I've seen a lot of people talk about this, and I'd be very surprised to see a world in which something like that would happen.
Well, let's back up a little bit. Do I see wrestling on both TBS and TNT? I don't see that.
Right. Me too.
Okay. What's the problem? Why are we even having this conversation? I'll come out and say, I think at the core, it's Turner ad sales inability to sell AEW in an ad sales environment because of the nature of the content and the lack of all the things that I've been talking about for 2 years, like story, real story, not like wrestling angle, living in your basement story. I'm talking about real compelling story that attracts and grows an audience. Because I think I've also said on this show many times, in the television industry, you're either growing or dying. Okay. It is what it is. So if Turner can't sell it, which is why they're having a conversation, because they own a piece of AEW, if I'm correct, and I believe I am. If they can't sell it and they're not making any money, and they looked at the books and went, ugh, why the fuck would they give it beachfront property on a primetime slot? It wouldn't. I don't see that scenario. I think if any executive makes a decision like we think is being analyzed right now, it's like, no, we tried it. We're looking at it. We see the numbers. We see the growth or lack thereof. We see what our ad sales team is able to do with it. We can't afford this property. Afford meaning keep investing in it because you're not getting a return on it. Whereas there is a return investment strategy, perhaps with Monday Night Raw, whatever, WWE Raw. So I don't see the scenario where AEW exists on one night on TBS and TNT has Raw. I agree. Maybe it could happen. I mean, I don't know, but I have a hard time swallowing that one. I can see a scenario where perhaps, especially for the rest of the term of the agreement, depending on what the agreement looks like with Turner and AEW, where AEW could be relegated to a different platform. If they can't sell it on TBS, they sure as hell are not going to sell it on Discovery. That ain't happening. True TV has dabbled in wrestling before. Now again, this was 100 years ago, and nothing's the same. Everything's different. But True TV did dabble in male 18 to 49-year-old programming. I did the Midget Wrestling with them, as well as some other programs that I created for True TV with Jason. So I could kind of see, but guess what happens to AEW? The 850,000 viewers a week that they get right now are going to go down to about 340, 360.
Right. And let's talk about it too from an optics standpoint, right? You always talk about less than, better than, different than. If AEW, and I'm just being real here, like I'm not trying to disparage anybody. I'm referring to the court of public opinion. If AEW were to downgrade from being on a TBS or a TNT and be put on a True TV, a Discovery, or if it was off Turner altogether and then off shot to another landing spot, I don't even know where that would be. It's undoubtedly going to be viewed as less than what it already was. And that will be a deterrent for a lot of people coming back and viewing it. Look how quickly the Impact audience went away from the moment that they left Spike. Impact had, you can make the LOL TNA jokes all you want. There were 1 million plus people every single week that were watching TNA when they were on Spike. Committed every single week. Once they started channel surfing, Destination America, Pop TV, one by one, it decreased, and the brand value was totally shot. I worry greatly for the wrestling industry, Eric, where if something like this were to happen, a place that is looked at as a major cash cow for wrestlers to actually earn a living and have a place to work could go by the wayside pretty quickly. What say you?
Well, that's life.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm going to be really careful here. AEW has been a great opportunity for some really great people, good human beings with families that contribute to society as a whole. They're good people. And they've challenged themselves and made a choice to pursue a line of work like any musician, any actor or actress, opera singer, ballet dancer, any performer, writer, directors, people that live in the arts and performance and entertainment make it a commitment to learn and to improve and to grow and to ascend to newer, better heights in their professions. It's a big commitment. And it comes with a lot of great stuff. It comes with a lot of very difficult stuff too. And compromise, sacrifice. So yes, AEW has been great for those people. And I would really, because some of them are friends of mine, people that I think highly of, even if we're not close friends or friends, people that I still think very highly of, and don't want to see them, without a job. But here's where it gets difficult. If it's not real, meaning if this is just the greatest fantasy wrestling camp in history that paid people to go, embrace it, take advantage of it, use it to get better, to grow, to learn, whatever. But it doesn't mean that it's real. Is it going to hurt the industry as a whole? Actually, it's not. Is it going to hurt individuals who rely on it for income and to feed their families? Absolutely, it will. But this is not going to have any adverse effect on the industry as a whole. So
See,
I wouldn't worry too much about it.
I'm curious why you think.
Let me finish, and then I'll hand it back to you.
Sure.
The point you made, and it was an astute one, was that if AEW moves to another network, a lesser network, a network that is even perceived as a lesser, even if it's not too much less, right? The audience will lose faith in the brand. They will decide that it's no longer worth their time. I have spoken so many times over the years about a gentleman by the name of Gary Considine, who was an executive. He was executive producer of The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, who I had become friends with, still am. And I've talked about on this show and perhaps on 83 Weeks, I think it was even in my book, how in a conversation I had with Gary Considine, and this was back in 97, early 98, WWE Nitro was rocking. Everything I touched turned to gold. It was awesome. Worked with Jay, got to know Gary. We talked a lot about business away from wrestling and all that. And Gary said to me once, he goes, Eric, and he had a lot more experience than I did at that time, obviously. And he said, Eric, one thing that I've learned about the audience is once they vote with their remote, getting them back is almost impossible. It's harder to get them back than it was to get them in the first time. Very valuable piece of advice. And I've given Gary credit for it every single time I've used it. But that's exactly what AEW has been facing. This has been going on now for a year. All the Punk drama, letting that happen, having Punk shit all over AEW and Tony Khan, that was the beginning of the audience losing faith. And it's progressively gotten worse. That big is going to change the history of professional wrestling. This is the best show in the history of AEW. Company's been around for 4 years, Tony. Talk about history. Just overhype and overpromising and under-delivering consistently. Death by 1,000 cuts. It's never been one thing. It's all these little things eat away at your credibility. Eat away at the audience's belief in you. Eat away at their loyalty because they don't want to be loyal to someone who isn't being loyal back by delivering on their promises and overhyping and spinning. So this process that you fear has been going on now for 6 or 8 months and getting progressively worse. To your point, more specifically, if that happens, I think there's no coming back.
Yeah.
As you pointed out, just like TNA, it's not coming back.
Yeah. But I'm really surprised, honestly, to hear you say how you don't think that would have that much of an impact on the industry as a whole if something like that were to happen. Because, I mean, you know it better than anyone. When WCW went out, WWE became the only show in town for almost 20 years, right? And it had a radical effect on talent, TV, creative, in all these different areas. It had a radical effect. I think you could argue, Eric, fairly and in good faith, that one of the main reasons that WWE TV is so hot right now and so much more cohesive creatively is because they faced some pressure in the past couple of years to have to step their game up because they had someone not competing with them, but competitive in the marketplace for contracts and having to make them stay
John,
on their toes.
I know that's a passionate plea for inclusion of AEW in terms of the success that WWE is enjoying right now. I'm sorry to throw a flag on that. It's an emotional narrative amongst the independent wrestling community.
There's proof, though.
There's no proof. Let me tell you. Let me back up.
Cody Rhodes? How is that not proof? Cody Rhodes is living proof of that. Without the existence of AEW, Cody Rhodes can't go back to WWE and become this gigantic John Cena-esque star for them. It doesn't happen. That's concrete.
It's not. You're looking at it through a prism that you choose to pick up and look at this through. Has it benefited Cody Rhodes? Absolutely. But we're talking about the business as a whole. Did it affect advertising? No. Did it affect distribution opportunities? No. Did it affect international licensing? No. Did it affect content? Yes. And does content have a downstream effect on all of the above?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's downstream. Let me finish my thought.
No, I'm not interrupting. Go ahead.
We're talking about the business. We're not talking about individuals in the business. I will say to you, if you want it, in fact, let's back up 5 years. Let's back up almost 5.5 years when I got a phone call from Bruce Pritchard asking if I'd be interested in taking a meeting with Vince McMahon to discuss coming in as the director of SmackDown. Okay. One of the first things that I learned, well, after the first couple of meetings with Vince, which, that was short and sweet. I sat down with a group of people who, and I don't think this is confidential information. I doubt that it is. But there was a consultant group that had come in and had been there for quite a while who were going, and this is not unusual at all. All big companies do this, especially publicly held ones, where you go and you do an audit. And one of the things that company had identified prior to me getting there was some of the things that needed to be addressed moving forward based on their research, which was extensive. And there were meetings, myself, Paul Heyman, a lot of other people, executives at our level and above, that were a part of this process. So this process of reimagining, and that was the first time I'd ever heard that word used in a corporate environment, reimagining how WWE needed to grow moving forward into the future was a weekly meeting. Okay. So this change in the direction isn't because of AEW, despite the fact that all these hardcore bleeding AEW fans want to believe it to be true. It doesn't mean it is. This is an evolution and a change that had started before I got hired there in 2019. So to assign one thing, one individual, a company that comes up and creates competition for the contracts in the marketplace. I'm sorry, there's no competition. There's maybe a handful, but in the big scheme of things, I'm sorry, not a pimple on a hamster's ass.
I'm not sitting here saying that AEW deserves all the credit in the world for that. I do not care either way what credit AEW gets. I don't work for them. I'm never going to work for them. It doesn't matter to me.
That's for sure.
No, it's true. It doesn't matter to me. Okay.
No, you don't. You don't get the irony.
No, I get the irony. I get the irony. I just, for me, Eric, it's not a matter of, oh, you got to give credit to this, you got to give credit to that. There were a lot of reactionary moves from WWE from the onset of AEW's existence beginning into where they are now. NXT becoming a TV property, number one, right off the bat, is directly related to Dynamite launching when it did. I mean, it's directly. And that's not a fault. There's nothing wrong with that. And might it have happened eventually? Sure. But it happening at the speed in which it did, when it did, there are many examples of that being the case. So I just
I'm going to give you that one because I was there at the time.
Yeah.
So I can give you that one. Although it had been discussed, as you said previously, and it may have happened anyway, but whatever. Let's set that one aside. I'll give you that one. Give me another example.
Let's see. I mean, I've told you from a contract perspective for talent, I think talent, it was immediate.
That doesn't affect the business. That affects the individual.
So having top drawing talent doesn't affect business?
Negotiating for contracts does not affect business. It's like the cost of goods. It is what it is. I'm talking about the business as a whole. Growth in the industry, bigger distribution, larger international footprints, all of the things that matter in the growth of the business or sustaining the business. And negotiating contracts doesn't fall into that category.
I know. I think the main characters on your television show are a big reason why people watch them. Is there anybody
in WWE right now that WWE wishes they had or tried to get and couldn't?
Yeah, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega.
Okay.
Chris Jericho.
And they want Chris Jericho back?
I'm sure they'd take. You're telling me if Chris Jericho said, I'd
No,
like
no,
to
no,
come
no,
back,
no,
you wouldn't
no.
take him
You're
back?
answering a question with a question, Muckerfather. You threw Chris Jericho's
They
name
haven't
out.
had a chance to go after Chris Jericho.
Okay. Now we're getting into silliness.
No, but it's true. I mean, they haven't. He's been under contract this entire time, and he immediately.
Oh, that suggests that they want him back? That's what we're talking about here. Who does WWE want that they can't get? And you're saying because Chris Jericho is in AEW that they want him,
MJF.
that they can't get him?
There's one, MJF.
How do you know that?
How do I know that WWE would want him? Come on.
Of course they'd want him.
And
I would not be, I would not be surprised if there weren't current negotiations and discussions. Is that going to affect WWE's business?
No, but the main characters on your television program drive content, as you just said. They drive live event ticket sales. Look at CM Punk coming back into WWE. There's a direct correlation with ticket sales.
Affecting the business.
How is ticket sales not the business? How is the gate not the business?
So WWE needs to sell out more than the. I mean, you can only sell out. You can't sell out plus.
Dude, they just did like a 2,000 ticket increase on the Monday Night Raw show that CM Punk wasn't even on last week once Punk came back just because of the anticipation. I mean, there's tangible evidence of this. It's not.
I am the guy that went way off in the deep end, acquiring all the top talent that I could acquire because I believe that talent drives business. That's not the issue. You're arguing a point that I'm not trying to argue against. Wrestling is a talent-driven business. Okay, good. What we're talking about, though, is how AEW enhanced the overall industry. And I'm just not willing to accept that any one individual on the current roster is going to affect WWE's trajectory and the overall trajectory, more importantly, of the entire industry.
I'm a fan of believing that giving talent a place with sizable TV and a good way to make a living is a significant help to the rest of the industry. And AEW, how making money that is sustainable rather than twirling away on the indies?
That's an individual thing. It's not a talent. It's not a business thing.
That's promoting a good culture to have within the industry.
Oh God! Now we're okay.
No, I know you're going to say, "Oh, he's too woke. He's just looking at." I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Love you.
Only with a couple of F-bombs in it.
I love you dearly. I do. I'm
so warm and fuzzy. I talk to you, I get all warm and fuzzy.
Hey, I want to get to a couple questions here before we wrap up from our ad-free shows fans. This one from Brian. Do you think TKO could take a deal that they like and that WWE does not like, or do you think they are letting WWE take the lead on all this?
I couldn't even guess. I would look. It always comes down to one guy. That's Ari Emanuel. So,
isn't it interesting?
I think there'd be plenty of conversation and consideration and respect, and perhaps it'll be deferential to WWE, but it's this cat by the name of Nick Khan.
Right. And he's in those.
He's like, okay, that's a whole nother show.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually a freaking movie. This Nick Khan guy, this is a movie. This is like really a good movie. So yeah, I think the decision will be characterized by solidarity and positive effect.
Isn't it interesting? And we don't know for sure. For all we know, he's being brought in via Zoom on these things or whatever. But Vince McMahon has not been mentioned in any of these reports about negotiations, and Vince was retained and put in his position for the idea of leading strategic advancement. And yet we're hearing about Nick Khan and Paul Levesque and Mark Shapiro being in these conversations. It's just fascinating to me that we don't hear Vince's name come up in them.
Not really. Vince is still controversial. There's that cloud. And look, when you have meetings like this, if these meetings are happening, again, I am working off a lot of presumptions here, some of which I absolutely believe, some of it I'm not 100% sure of, whatever, it doesn't matter. But if this meeting that presumably happened, who was in the meeting? One more time. I know we've talked about who was in the meeting.
Mark Shapiro.
Stop right there. Mark Shapiro's the business side, right? What's his title? I don't even know for sure.
I'm pretty sure he's the chairman of TKO.
Okay. Well, we know why he was there. Who else was there?
Nick Khan.
Huh.
Paul Levesque.
The guy that there needs to be a movie about? Yeah. We know why he's in it. We know exactly why he's in that meeting. Who else was in that meeting?
Paul Levesque.
Let's put Paul off to the side because that's the one I want to talk about. Who else?
Bruce Campbell, who is Warner Bros. Discovery's Chief Revenue and Strategy Officer.
Boom. Dot, 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 dot. Three-dimensional picture. Each one of those people had a pivotal role directly related to the ongoing business. Directly. Not indirectly as a consultant, not as a member of the board. Directly. Why was Paul Levesque in that meeting? Because in many respects, those other, and I mean this with all due respect to Paul, like really lots of respect for Paul, more than I ever thought I would have. And I started out with a lot. But the fact that Paul Levesque was in that meeting tells me that this was a meeting that was also going to include long-term creative.
At least what type of content they can expect with the program.
They already know what kind of content they can expect. Look, you got decades of it.
No, but I mean, like you said, creative strategy going forward.
Creative strategy, long-term plan, strategic creative thinking. Otherwise, Paul Levesque would not have been in that meeting. And to my point, or to your point, why was Vince McMahon not in that meeting? Because Paul Levesque is the voice. They don't need two voices. They don't need to show, hey, we got Vince McMahon on our team. They already know that. It's not necessary. In meetings like that, it's all about who's absolutely necessary.
Does Paul Levesque being there give you any indication that this wasn't the first meeting between the two sides?
Paul Levesque being there suggests to me that this might have been the last meeting before there's an announcement.
Wow. So you think it's that far along in the process?
I do.
So you're going to make a bold prediction for us here?
I would have made it yesterday. I think it's pretty obvious now.
You think
it's not so bold? I mean, it's not bold anymore. It was bold.
You think this is going to cross the finish line?
I'm sorry?
You think this is going to get across the finish line?
Yeah.
Gun to your head, is AEW involved in Warner Bros. Discovery by the end of 2024?
No. For all the reasons we just talked about.
Yeah.
And I again, I don't know this. I want to make it very freaking clear. I don't even hope for this.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by it. I can't help but be excited about an aspect of the business that I truly am fascinated with, that being the business of the business, which is why I'm so kind of half-assed when it comes to discussions about what's going on in the ring and what's going on with creative. I'm interested, but it's not passion. But the business of the wrestling business has always been a passion for me. And this is fascinating. The last 12 months has been fascinating. This, compared to the acquisition of WWE by Endeavor, I don't know, it's kind of hard to think about anything being bigger than that. But this is pretty freaking close.
It's substantial.
And while I'm excited or interested or passionate about the business of the business, I take no great pleasure in saying that I've been talking about this for 2 years. And for 2 years, I've been characterized as anti-AEW. Even the people that quote me, in different online news sources, former President Eric Bischoff, once again criticizing, or has become known for criticizing Tony Khan. I'm not criticizing. I'm pointing out things that I've seen that I knew and still believe, whether this transaction actually occurs or not, will still lead to a very, very sad, frustrating miss of a great opportunity. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I just don't think I am.
From Brian, if WBD is the place for WWE, do you think they would want to get the streaming right away from Peacock and move it to Max? I mean, the one thing, Brian, you got to keep in mind, they have an existing contract with NBC Universal to keep the content there on Peacock through 2026. And their business relationship with NBC Universal is not ending. SmackDown is going to be there. So I'd be surprised, Eric, if the library were to move over. Now, that's not to say there couldn't be other avenues for programming that is specific to Warner Brothers Discovery potentially down the line for them to explore either.
Or you could bifurcate the library a little bit. Perhaps there's a scenario where there's a big library there, there's a certain percentage of it or a certain segment of it that could go along with it. I mean, you never know. And I certainly am not in any position to try to predict one way or the other, or even have an opinion. Too many things I don't understand and I don't know.
Yeah. Aaron wants to know, do you guys have any thoughts on the reports of WBD having a 60% chance of going bankrupt? I mean, I feel like that's dealing with hypotheticals ultimately. And we talked before about cost cutting as is. So
not even going to engage in that one.
Yeah. Just all hypotheticals there. One thing that I want to hit on real quick before we wrap. The Ring of Honor stuff is really interesting, Eric, because I heard you talking about it too elsewhere. The report from Nick Hausman a couple weeks ago, I think it was that CW had expressed interest in Ring of Honor, and Tony really didn't engage on it, and he confirmed that on the media.
Hold on one second. I'm going to ask you to do something because we're live with our ad-free show audience. I'm going to use the restroom.
Sure.
And you're going to do a Q&A with some of the fine folks we have here with us, so we don't have to shut this down. I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, better yet, I'm going to play this clip that I was going to tee up for our listeners here. And this is something that I always found to be really interesting because I was talking to took the wrong camera there. Sorry. I was talking to Tony on the call about the idea of what is the value of the Ring of Honor TV rights and where could they distribute that content? Because right now it's only being distributed on Honor Club. So I asked about that on this call, and I want you all to take a listen to what his response was because it kind of changes over the course of his answer.
Well, it's a great question. We've had really good talks with Warner Brothers Discovery. I had a great visit with them today, and we've got a really exciting relationship that has grown a lot over the years, and it has expanded for AEW. Ring of Honor is still really a third party in the relationship and is a company that's putting on really exciting wrestling, and it's, I think, peripheral to the conversation right now, but it offers a lot of value to AEW and to media companies. There's a lot of interest in ROH and some of the most exciting wrestling and some of the most exciting stories and some of the best events in ROH's history are happening now. And it's really awesome that ROH has all these options, and also it's very complimentary for myself and my family and our business interests that, the ROH media rights and the massive library and IP are there and accessible to us as we pursue new media rights for AEW in 2024. And we also have the additional value of the ROH library with the AEW library that continue to grow. Almost 220 episodes of Wednesday Night Dynamite alone, and well over 100 episodes of Friday Night Rampage. And it's been an exciting half year on AEW Collision, and had a great show this past week, and I think several weeks in a row, great episodes of Collision, in particular since the Continental Classic kicked on, and Dynamite. We've had some great shows recently also, especially since the Continental Classic got going. And it's been a banner year for AEW on pay-per-view, and our pay-per-view library has continued to grow with more events and great history going back to 2019. So the library is a big part of the AEW media rights, but having the complementary value of the Ring of Honor library that I purchased with the company for what I believe is a very good value in 2022. It's a very valuable asset to position in the marketplace, along with the AEW streaming library and the ability to create new events in the future from AEW and Ring of Honor, and continue great traditions like Final Battle this Friday.
Oh my God. I got vertigo listening to that. That is, wow. That's like, he's selling his ass off.
He's a salesman. Yeah, I mean, that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to sell here.
Yeah, and here's a fact. Nobody's interested in Ring of Honor. The only person interested in Ring of Honor is Tony Khan.
Well, that's what I want to bring up, because it's so clear when you listen to that. He starts the answer, Eric. I know you have to get up, but he starts the answer by saying that Ring of Honor is peripheral to AEW TV rights. And then by the end of that answer, he's saying how Ring of Honor would be perfectly complementary to AEW TV rights. And it's very evident to me that he wants to bundle them in any sort of media deal. And the report of him declining to meet further with the CW about Ring of Honor only further indicates that to me. And I just don't think that there's interest in the marketplace for something like that, especially.
You know what? Here's another tell. Aside from the fact that, that was about 15,000, that was a 15,000 word answer that could have been answered succinctly in about 24. And anytime somebody becomes so superfluous with their language and describing and painting the big picture in the Continental Classic and exciting matches, that's like you're just pitching to the world because you've got no interest from any individual. That was such a broad pitch. That was one tell. The other one, it's important to me and my family. Really? So now it's the Khan family, the owners of the Jacksonville Jaguars and whatever else they own, right? This is a Khan family presentation. It's important to the Khan family. Man, he's trying to leverage mommy and daddy. I get it. I would do the same freaking thing, which is why I recognize it for what it is. Tony knows. This is the first time I've heard that. Tony knows.
And I'm not crapping on Tony. I understand the pitch.
But he sees the handwriting on the wall and he's out pitching.
But I just think, and I've taken the temperature on this from people within AEW and even WBD, and it feels like this hell-bent nature of trying to bundle these two properties is falling on deaf ears. And I don't believe that that's helping sustain any leverage in these negotiations.
It has no leverage.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's why he's leveraging the family name, because he doesn't have any real leverage. I mean, it's so obvious to me. And I would do the same thing. I'm not picking on him. My back was against the wall and I saw the writing that I think he probably sees. I'd be doing the same thing. Hell, I'd bring my dad with me. But I think Tony knows or strongly suspects.
Yeah, I just think that the Ring of Honor stuff it's very misguided.
What did I say last week, John? I hate to keep interrupting you, but I don't get this many opportunities to be right all the freaking time. What did I say last week? If Ring of Honor was a horse, I would shoot it. Do you know why I would shoot it if it was a horse? Because with a horse, if a horse breaks its leg, there's no chance to fix it. It's not like a dog or even a cat or you or me. If a horse breaks its leg, because there are so many small, fine bones in a horse's leg and foot, that if it breaks, it's not reparable.
Yeah.
So you put the horse out of its misery. You don't feed the horse while it's laying in its stall because it can't get up. You shoot the horse. And if Ring of Honor was a horse, out of empathy and compassion, I wouldn't keep feeding it. I would shoot it and then take the food that I had been feeding the sick, crippled, going to die anyway horse, and I would allocate it to the horses that can actually run.
You're going to end up with some sous vide horse burgers by the end
Oh,
of it.
God! Don't even bring it up. Don't even bring it up. You talk about horse meat out in the part of the country that I live in, you find yourself swinging from the back of a truck.
Jeez. My goodness.
They take their horses seriously out here.
I know.
Do not abuse a horse in this part of the country.
Are you a moose guy? Yeah, you like moose meat?
I'll eat moose.
Yeah.
Yeah. I shot a moose.
Well, I was going to say, when I was up in Maine, if you were lucky enough to survive a car versus moose collision, the first question from the park rangers would be, you want to keep it?
Of course. Moose meat have you ever had moose meat?
Yes, I have.
It's delicious.
Delicious. It's good. It's good. It's just a little bit of an acquired taste, but it's good. Yeah, man. I mean, this was great. This is a great episode of Strictly Business, and I don't think we'll be done discussing this particular topic. I think
no, but let's close it up, John. Look. We don't know. Nobody knows. Dave Meltzer doesn't know. Eric Bischoff doesn't know. Nobody knows. I'm just like everybody else, and you. We're all just talking about what we think we know based on what we hear. The difference between me and everybody else is I've been there and I've done it. And I see a picture a little differently than others. But I don't know either. I just have feelings that are different for most people based on what I've experienced. And if I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, in many respects, I hope I'm wrong. I don't want to see Tony. I don't want to see AEW, end up in a drain. I really don't. Again, there's people there that I really respect and like, and some of them I'm friends with, some of them I just admire. Absolutely. Do I want to see MJF continue to grow? Absolutely. Are there people there that I'm friends with and friendly with when I see them? Absolutely. But if it happens, I don't think anybody should be surprised. Not anybody listening to this show.
If something does happen, it's not personal. It's strictly business. And we want you on our team here on Strictly Business. You head on over to advertisewitheric.com. You're going to get your business out. You're going to get your product out in front of thousands of listeners every single week. Advertisewitheric.com is your place to be for that. And go over to boxofgimmicks.com because we just uploaded a bunch of Strictly Business merchandise. So go ahead and check that out, including Christmas ornaments. Imagine going over to your tree and having a Strictly Business Christmas ornament. Are you kidding me? Things are going to sell like hotcakes, and we still have, 11 days till Christmas as we record this? Plenty of time to get that. Boxofgimmicks.com. Eric, anything else you want to add?
Yeah. Get a box of meat. Get riverbend.com. Riverbend Ranch Meats. Still time to get some as a gift for your family, for the holiday dinners, whatever. You're going to be really glad you did, and you can thank me later. That's getriverbend.com.
This has been Strictly Business. We will see you next time.